My name is Jack Holden. I'm 32 years old, and I live in a quiet corner of Boston where the winters come hard and the coffee tastes like survival. I work in the legal department of a private architecture firm downtown. Nothing flashy, just paperwork, contracts, and the occasional ethical dilemma no one talks about out loud. This is the story I've never told anyone. I call it. She touched my face in the car and said, "Do you always make girls smile like this?" The night it began, I was supposed to be home. I had just finished a 70-hour week. My sister had been texting me nonstop about Mom. How she was forgetting things again. How I never called. How everything was falling on her shoulders. I needed peace. Instead, I got Eliza. It was a Friday night. Cold, drizzly. I was sitting in my car, watching the city lights through rain-specked glass, just letting my mind go blank. That's when the passenger door swung open, and in she got. Just like that. "Hey, sorry I'm late," she said, like she belonged there, like we'd done this 100 times before. I stared at her. She was soaked, curls dripping over a dark green coat, cheeks flushed from the cold. Her eyes were wide, playful, blue with something behind them I couldn't place. "You've got the wrong car," I said, though my voice was more curious than annoyed. She blinked, looked around, laughed softly. "Oh God, I really do. You're not Eli." "Nope, Jack." "Jesus, I'm so sorry." She reached for the door handle. "Wait," I said. "I don't know why. You're soaked. You'll freeze out there." She paused. A small, grateful smile curled across her lips. She let go of the handle. "Thanks, Jack." I didn't ask why she stayed. Maybe I didn't want to know. The rain kept falling. We talked about the weather, the madness of rideshares, her job at some publishing house, my firm, a mutual hatred of overpriced coffee. Felt easy, like leaning into a dream. At one point, I said something stupid. I think about the CEO of my firm mistaking his Bluetooth earpiece for a mint, and she laughed. Hard. She had one of those laughs that made you feel like the funniest man on earth. Then came the moment. She turned to me, her face lit softly by the dashboard lights, eyes glimmering like the world hadn't ruined her yet. She reached over, gently brushed her fingers along my jaw, and said, "Do you always make girls smile like this?" And I froze. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I'd never had anyone look at me like that. Like they saw me. Not the version I showed the world. Not the tired guy with a pile of unread legal briefs. Not the distant son, but me. "No," I said finally. "Just you." We sat in silence after that. Not awkward, not tense. Just quiet. Like the city had dimmed its noise for us. Eventually, her actual ride arrived. She smiled again. This time slower, sadder. "Maybe I'll get in the wrong car again sometime," she said, stepping out. I watched her disappear into the city, and I felt it. That thing no one talks about when you're 32 and tired of romantic cliches. I felt possibility. A week passed, then two. I told myself it was a fluke, a random moment, but I checked the passenger seat every morning like a damn fool. Then, on the third Friday, she walked into my building, right past security holding a coffee tray, like she belonged. "Jack Holden?" she asked the receptionist. I turned. Our eyes met again. She grinned. "I figured I owed you a rain check and a better coffee." I took the coffee and her number. Her name was Eliza Vaughn. We started seeing each other. Slowly at first, lunches, a walk through the Boston Common, that weird art exhibit at the museum she dragged me to. She was bold, funny, honest in a way that unsettled me. "You work so hard," she said one night. "But for what?" "My future," I muttered. "Whose future?" she asked. "Because it doesn't look like yours." She always saw too much. A month in, I took her to a holiday party at my firm. She wore a wine-colored dress that made half the office forget how to breathe. My boss, Andrew Ferris, the type who smiled like a wolf, pulled me aside. "She's out of your league, Jack. Don't screw it up." Sounded like a joke, but he wasn't laughing. A week later, she got an offer from our firm. Copywriting lead, new campaign, a cross-department project Ferris had pitched. She accepted. Told me she wanted to collide worlds. I pretended I was happy, but something felt off. And then it started. Subtle, small things. Whispers in the office. A missed call. A text from her at 2 a.m. saying she was still wrapping things up with Ferris. My sister called, crying, saying Mom had forgotten her name that morning. I should have gone. I didn't. I stayed spinning in this weird web Eliza and I were weaving. Or maybe unraveling. One night, she didn't come over like she said she would. I waited. I called. No answer. At 1:17 a.m., I drove to her apartment. Her car was there. So was his. And for the first time in my life, I didn't go to the door. I just sat in the car and stared at the building, wondering what I was about to lose. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the car outside Eliza's building until just before sunrise, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my heart pounding in a slow, confused rhythm. I kept telling myself I didn't know anything, that the car meant nothing, that two adults working on a pitch might just talk. At 1 a.m., in the same building, with no lights on in the living room, I told myself all of that, and I drove away. Eliza called me the next morning like nothing had happened. Hey stranger, she said, her voice warm and casual. Last night was a beast. Sorry I didn't text. You still want to do brunch? I hesitated. My silence must have been just long enough. Jack, she said more softly. I lied. Yeah, of course. Just tired. We met at this little corner cafe in South End where the windows fog up from too many conversations and too much coffee. She wore this oversized sweater I once said made her look like trouble wrapped in comfort. I used to mean that in a good way. She talked about work, about Ferris, about the campaign. I nodded, smiled, tried not to wonder why I could still smell his cologne on her sleeves. Then came the kicker. I think he's grooming me for something big, she said. Said I have a rare mind for persuasion. I laughed once, bitter and low. What? She asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Nothing, I said. I'm just trying to remember what part of this started out real. She tilted her head. What does that mean? You walked into my car like it was fate. Now you're basically working under the guy who warned me not to trust you. Tell me that's not a little convenient. Her lips parted, a flicker of hurt flashing across her face. I didn't plan that, Jack. And you don't get to project your trust issues on me just because you're scared of connection. That's not fair. Neither is being accused of things I haven't done. You said you trusted me. I looked away, out the window, at a couple walking their dog, laughing like the world still made sense. Did you sleep with him? I asked quietly. The silence between us cracked like glass. When I looked back, her eyes were shining, not with guilt, but with something colder. No, she said, but thank you for reminding me why I don't let people in. She stood, left a 20 on the table, walked out, and that was that. Except, it wasn't. 3 days later, Ferris called me into his office. Personal conflicts are starting to affect workflow, he said coolly. Eliza's stepping away from the campaign. I frowned. She told you about us? He smiled, folding his hands together like a preacher ready to bury someone. She didn't have to. You two aren't exactly subtle. I'm trying to keep this professional, Jack. But if this becomes messy, there will be consequences. For both of you. There was something smug in his voice, something proprietary. I nodded, got up to leave. Oh, he added as I reached the door. And Jack? Not everyone who smiles at you is on your side. Later that night, I found her waiting by my car. Same spot as the first night. She looked tired, drenched in evening rain. Déjà vu with more pain. You're still my favorite mistake, she said, forcing a smile. Are you saying you made one? I asked. She hesitated. I said we did. I unlocked the door. She got in. We didn't talk. We just sat, like we were searching for the moment when this all still felt innocent. Her voice broke the silence. You don't know what Ferris is, what he's capable of. I tried to warn you. You defended him. I didn't want to lose my job. Or you. But maybe I was too late on both. I looked at her then, really looked. She was fraying at the edges, hiding bruises I couldn't see but could almost feel. "Eliza," I whispered. "Tell me the truth. Did something happen?" She looked down, pulled her sleeve over her wrist. Then, without warning, she leaned in, touched my face gently, like she had that first night, and said, "Do you still make girls smile like this, Jack?" Only this time, her smile trembled. "I don't know," I said. "You tell me." She kissed me, soft, sad, searching for something lost. When we pulled apart, she whispered, "He has something on me." My stomach twisted. What kind of something? But she didn't answer. She opened the door and left. That night, I broke into Ferris's office. I know, stupid, dangerous, reckless, but the man had secrets. I could feel them in my bones. Inside his locked drawer, I found a USB drive labeled Vaughn. I didn't open it then. I was too scared of what I might find. But I knew one thing. This wasn't just a love story anymore. It was a war. And the woman who touched my face with so much tenderness? She was at the center of something much darker than either of us realized. I didn't sleep that night either. The USB drive sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. I paced, poured whiskey, didn't drink it. Thought about Mom, my sister, the kind of man I was becoming. I thought about Eliza, her laugh, the way she touched my face, the way she said, "He has something on me." At 3:14 a.m., I finally plugged it into my laptop. Inside were 5 folders, each labeled with a woman's name. Vaughn was one of them. Inside hers were screenshots of text messages, some between her and Ferris, some between her and another man I didn't recognize. At first, it looked like harmless flirting. But then it got darker. There were pictures, surveillance stills, one of her on her balcony, another of her leaving my building. There were recordings too, calls, clipped audio files, all with timestamps. Some were taken after she had started seeing me. I felt sick. There was a final document, a non-disclosure agreement, her signature on the bottom, dated 2 weeks before she ever got in my car. Couldn't breathe. My mind raced with questions I didn't want the answers to. Was I just a cover story? An alibi? A pawn? Or was she, too, being played? That morning, I called her. No answer. I drove to her apartment. Gone. Empty. Cleaned out like a ghost. The landlord said she moved out that morning. Left no forwarding address. Paid cash to break her lease. Vanished. Just like that. The next few weeks blurred. Ferris avoided me. The campaign moved forward without either of us. HR said Eliza resigned. No one talked about it. I was given a quiet transfer. A smaller project. Less visibility. A warning without words. And just when I thought it was over, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name written in her handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It read, "Jack, I lied to you, but not about everything. I took the wrong car that night on purpose. I knew who you were. I had seen your face in the company newsletter. I thought if I got close, I could get what Ferris wanted and get out. But then you made me laugh. You made me feel. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to stay. He recorded us. Blackmailed me. Said if I didn't feed him information, he'd leak everything. Even photos that weren't real. I wasn't innocent. But I wasn't evil either. I'm sorry I touched your face. I'm sorry I kissed you. But mostly, I'm sorry I made you believe in something that couldn't survive the truth. You asked me once if I always smile like that. Only when I was with you. I sat on my steps for a long time after reading that. I think a part of me waited for her to show up again. But she didn't. Months passed. Ferris retired after an anonymous whistleblower exposed unethical surveillance in the workplace. No one knew who leaked the files. Let's just say, I knew exactly what I was doing with that USB. Eliza was never mentioned again. But I kept that letter. Still have it, tucked behind a photo of my mom, who passed away quietly that spring. It reminds me that some love stories don't end in happily ever afters. Some end in letters with no return address. We fall in love with illusions more often than people. But every so often, even in deception, there's truth. And sometimes, Even when love doesn't last, it leaves you with something just as valuable: clarity, closure, and the knowledge that your heart still knows how to feel. I still sit in my car some nights, listening to the rain, and every once in a while, I swear, I can still feel her fingertips brush against my face.